Thank you for tuning. So, I want to talk today about a few things. Um, let's start with the auto workers situation. I know if you guys have been on my Facebook page, you seen this, so you already know, right? Um, or you saw me do a brief little comment on it. But let's get into it today and have a conversation and see exactly what I'm talking about. Okay. Um, let's see where I want to start with you. Let's go here. All right, so here is the auto worker situation. This is just a Google search, right? It says Canada reached a tentative contract agreement ending the strike, blah 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 blah, right? So the question is, what did they want? Because let me see here. Let me see if I can pull up the Facebook post for you so you can get an idea of exactly what I'm talking about. What prompted this? All right. Put this on the screen for you. All right. So what I was saying was auto workers, all sadness. For those that don't know, the word sad actually means satisfy, right? Satisfied, not the way we use it today, or the way majority of people use it today. So, but all sadness from all strikes will be temporary. Okay. And the irony is that I told you it was going to be temporary 3 days ago, because they're all going to be temporary. That's why they keep having a strike over and over again. Same companies, same workforces keep striking because it'll always be temporary. I'm going to break down to you why. So for all strikes will be temporary if the scope is limited to a certain group of people. All right. A successful strike must consider the infinity of workers and the perceived totality of the free market. Okay. And if you're not already linked, go ahead and hop on the Facebook page and get some of this process experiential therapy, in theory, right? All right. So let's get back to talk about what they actually wanted. All right. Pulling that up for you now. And so what they wanted was they wanted to be paid more. Okay. So they also want to be paid more equally. One of the top goals of the United Auto Workers, it says here from this little clip from NBC News, which you decide if you value that source for yourself. For entertainment purposes, I am presenting it to you here on a quick Google search to build this entertainment story for you. So they want to also be paid more equally, one of the top goals of the United Auto Workers, which began striking at 3 plants early Friday, is to eliminate tiered compensation at the big 3 U.S. car makers, General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler. Now, eliminate tiered compensation. I mean, that I got a quote for you guys that you heard me talk about on the channels in the past. The quote is, "You will own nothing and be happy." We as Americans got to ask ourselves, what if you're unfamiliar with this, right? What is the plan to what is the plan? It's one thing to tell you that's what's going to happen, or that's what's coming. But what is the plan to drive a whole nation, a population to you will own nothing and be happy? So what the auto workers are saying they wanted per this clip here is, again, be paid more. They want to be paid more equally. And it says here, they began striking. One of the big things is to eliminate tiered compensation. So when you say tiered compensation, when you go to work, right? You expect, I ain't gonna say you expect, because I don't know your situation, but many workplaces and many volunteer slaveries, as I like to call them, right? They have this thing where if you start today, you get you can't even call them healthy because like most of them are toxic to begin with. But in what someone call favorable situations, you get like an annual raise, right? An employee appraisal is what it's known as. Think about that as an asset when next time you talking to someone who wants to tell you that they're not property yet, or that they don't get treated like property. But employee appraisal, okay, where you get some sort of raise, bonus, whatever, right? So that means if you get 25 cents a year, just to make the math simple, then in theory, in 4 years, you should be making $1 more. Because that's how stupid they are. They be coming to you like, oh, we did our little assessment of the surrounding areas, and we found that our prices are considerable or comparable to those around you. And what that basically is saying, we all got together and presented this report to screw y'all. You know what I'm saying? That's really what they're saying, right? So, oh, we're gonna give you 2% increase this year, while the currency value, because they're gonna tell you it's inflation. But Line at 7 people know that it's not inflation of goods and prices, it's the deflation of the value of the currency, the fiat currency. So if deflation happened by 5%, they give you 2%. I mean, you do the math, you're still 3% in the hole. You're not, So anyway, the point of the matter is this. If you're supposed to be in theory making $1 more after 4 years, right? You used to start, and they say, we start you out at, let's say $20 an hour, right? This job starts at $20 an hour. So that means the person that's been there 4 years would be making $21 an hour. If you came and started and that job was still making $20 an hour to start, you would be making $20 an hour while they're making $21 an hour. And thank you for joining. Where I'm at now, and the topic is talking about what the auto workers actually wanted. To begin this talk, we're gonna cover a few topics. We're gonna cover this. I'm gonna show you how this is the wrong concept and why a strike is always temporary and keeps failing, and the same people keep coming back for strikes over and over again because they're not considering the entire workforce. All right, and then we'll move over into like Gaza and move this into the quote of "you'll own nothing and be happy." So what it is that here's the article clip there. Eliminate tiered compensation. Now think about if you went to work tomorrow and you've been there 5 years, or let's say 4 years for $1, 16 years for $4. So you would be making $24 an hour. The person that just started would have been making $20 an hour. And then they tell you one of two things that needs to happen. Either you need to go back to 20. I mean, it's an infinity of ways they could do this, but let's say either you're going to go back to 20 or they're going to get $24 an hour to start. How would you feel about that? Like, what would you say to that? Um, like if all of a sudden they get to tiered compensation is done away with, and now whatever the highest person, the person that's been there 28 years, they're going to make the same as the people that's just starting today, right? Does that mean that the person that sells in the sales job, the person that sells the least, makes the most as the person that sells the most? I mean, makes the same as the person that sells the most. Now, why is this important? All right, so they're wanting to be paid more, okay? Which the word pay, we gotta get into this technique, using the technology to understand what these words mean. The word pay mean to be satisfied. So the question is, are you talking about fiat currency? All right, is that what you're talking about when you say paid? Because you just want to make more per hour, or do you want some other incentives to leverage the situation? Now, let's look at the average profit margins on American cars made, because I'm shocked at this myself, right? I'm gonna show you how the United States as a society, or compare and contrast to Americans, they really got it fucked up. Because wait till you see this comparison I'm going to show you here. So average cars, right? Average profit on cars, US cars, here we go. Okay. Now, once we start getting the big sponsorships and donations or what have you, we can go and pay the Gallup poll, $10,000 to conduct a real precise survey. But right now we're just going to use Google to make it make sense. Okay. So Google says the average profit margin for car manufacturers is 7.5%, right? Now I looked up the one earlier that was just exclusive to the United States auto manufacturers, because this looks like it's including BMW and premium stuff, foreign stuff. And for the United States, it was 6%. So what that means is that I like to show you what I'm talking about. I like to show, because that makes you be able to see that I'm not just pulling numbers out the sky when applicable. And also you can go research this yourself too. So here's the average cost of a car, right? Per Statista. And give me 1 second here. Average cost American car companies. There you go. Okay. So in the United States, the average selling price of a new light vehicle, you might have an automobile. Remember, go check that video out. But they're saying for a light vehicle came around $46,290 in 2022. So rounded off to $47,000, 6% of that is $2,820. So what they're asking you to believe right away is that the auto manufacturers are only making 6%, and if you factor in what the other site said for the whole, 7.5%. So 6 to 7.5%. So they're claiming that when they sell you a $47,000 whatever, that after all of that production run, that they're only making roughly $3,000. The manufacturer is claiming that, right? Question number one to consider: do you believe that or not? You know what I mean? Let me know in the chat. So what I want to do now to drive home, let me put this here, to drive home how insane that sounds, right? And show you how our priorities needs to be reviewed. If the auto manufacturers, if that's true, they're only making 6% profit, right? Because the question is, how can the auto workers make more if all of that time, factor in R&D, the time it took the engineers to come up with technology, put it together, try it out, test it, whatever, pay all them materials, pay the people in the process of mining the materials, creating the resources they need, manufacturing all the stuff that goes in. See, it's a trickle down effect, right? Stay with me, we're building this. So if of the 47,000, there's only 3,000 left for profit, that would include paying the workers, right? There's not much room for them to give you more if they can only sell a car for $47,000. So what that means is that in order to give you more, they're gonna have to charge the people more. Now, here's where we're getting into the good stuff. Because now, to charge the people more, what does that mean? But hold on, before we get to there, let's look at this. Because remember, the auto manufacturers is only making 6% profit. The auto industry is a needed commodity, whether you want to talk about green, gas, electric, diesel, whatever, flying cars, that's going to be needed until we get the individual hovercrafts that come from IKEA that you can build yourself at home, right? So now look at this statistic. High-end luxury goods profit margins for luxury leather goods such as designer bags and wallets can range from 60 to 80%. And they claim this is because these goods use premium materials like required skilled craftsmanship to produce. The brand's reputation and exclusivity also contribute to its high profit margin. So what this says in translation is that consumers are okay with providing a 60 to 80% profit margin to the manufacturer. I'm not gonna, I'm not doing this for the vegan aspect or anything, but from the manufacturer that stitched together some cowhide for you to carry your iPhone around in and whatever else you put in those things. You're willing as a consumer to give them 60 to 80% profit, yet the auto industry can only make, if this is true data, 6% on the cars they sell. See, people, when I brought up and I said, look, in order for the community to be sustainable, your community, my community, whatever, right? You're going to have to get to the point where you're willing to pay your neighbor $2, $3, $4, $5 more per item than what you currently spend for it when you go to Walmart. And the response was, people was really like, nah, I'd rather go to Walmart than to give my neighbor, the person that lives next door to you or in your community. You guys are all fighting together for survival. They said they would rather go to Walmart so they could save $5. And when I asked them what would they do with that collective savings, they could like, oh, then they could buy, they might want a new pair of Nikes. This is like literally the conversation verbatim. So you would deny your neighbor the $5 because see, Walmart gonna get the we order 10 million of them discount. The neighbor, even if they're ordering and bringing it into the community themselves, it's going to cost them more to get it because they're going to be ordering at a lesser volume. Not to mention if it's something they're fabricating or manufacturing themselves. Okay? They still got overhead. They still got materials needed. They still got a bill of materials. But we're programmed. Let me say the United States mentality is programmed in consumerism. So you want to save $5 from your neighbor so that you can go and give it to China. Instead of keeping the currency in our own community, county, state. No, let's go give it to China. We got a problem with giving it to the neighbor. That means that our union workers have to go on strike to ask for more money, currency, fiat currency, that's already being manipulated, so that then in turn, what that sets the company up to do is raise prices for the people, and then to cut the workforce because they're going to dispute the fact that they have agreed to something that is not sustainable for them. So we must reduce the workforce now that y'all want more. And that means that the people left must produce more while still getting less. But here's the catch. Here's the catch. Here's the problem. The icing on the cake of that problem. See, the auto workers are just like any other workers. See, they're thinking about themselves, which sounds like it would be natural, but that's the fucked up part. Because you have to, and this is why the strikes are always temporary and will fail. All of them. Because you're not considering your neighbor. Simply because they don't work at the auto plant with you. Or the post office with you. Or the UPS delivery facility with you. And whoever struck last week, last month, whoever's gonna go on strike next month, next week. You feel like you so different. You feel like you're not being screwed just like they are, right? Pasha, what are you talking about? It's something we've covered here before on YNet 7. The productivity pay gap. That's a different graph than I showed you before, because the other graph had wages and compensation as separate lines. This one kind of just puts it together, right? Also, when I showed this to you last, it quoted the pay gap as being about 80%. Productivity was up 80%. And this one is much more generous in the hourly pay kind of line here. It's got much more of a little upward tick to it. The other one was kind of much more flat line. Okay. But what this one is showing is that productivity has grown 3.7% as much as pay. And this is why. Now, hold on. What's this? I like this one because it gives you a little bit of story about it. So most Americans believe that a rising tide should lift all boats, right? So anyway, right here it says, since the late 1970s, the policy All right, let me just read the whole thing so it makes sense. So that as an economy expands, all right, so everybody should reap the rewards. So as the economy grows, you get your fair share, right? Make sure you're seeing this. Okay, yeah. So as the economy grows, you get your fair share. You get it, you get back what you put in, right? So this outcome can be guaranteed by smart and compassionate policy choices or subverted by policymakers choosing a different path. So EPI's productivity pay tracker shows a shift toward the latter since the late 1970s, 79 to be exact. Our policy choices have led directly to a pronounced divergence between productivity and typical workers' pay. It doesn't have to be this way. So as you can see here, the two, it was really three. Like I said, wages and compensation. Now, you know, the difference between wages is what you get. Compensation is everything that the company may or the business may invest in you additional or as a whole, which would be, you know, like any benefits, bonuses, stuff like that. So, but as you can see, forever, basically, they were married. Productivity, wages, compensation, and then 79 happened, and then nobody else got a raise, but productivity went up, depending on sources, 65 to 80%, and wages were flatlined to 17%. All right. So now, Pasha, what does this mean with the auto workers? Why are you bringing this up for that? Because now, if the auto industry says we have to raise the prices of the cars, just like with McDonald's, when they said, you know, everybody was like, yeah, McDonald's minimum. I'm not, see, $15 for the minimum wage for McDonald's, $20 for minimum wage. See, I'm not a fan of currency at all. So all of these topics of discussion are just distractions for the real problem, to again give you some sort of temporary relief while they keep, you know, screwing you over, period. Because you've heard me say it a million times, I posted everywhere, you can't have equality. Let me get big for you and say this. You can't have equality in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in a system of fiat currency. Because all the system of fiat currency does is regulate the access. Regulates the access. Which is why we're going to talk about the Gaza Strip situation in a moment. So stay tuned for that. So if the people are all suffering the same demise, the auto workers strike is really saying, fuck the rest of the people. Which is in turn going to make the people and the industry itself say, fuck the workers. Which is why it's getting automated. Everything is going to be automated. Your burger joints is getting robots put it on to cook the burgers, take your orders. You see the new McDonald's, there's nobody there. It's all automated out front. All right. So this is why, because when the company says, hey, raise our prices, the rest of the people of the nation of the world is buying the product, can't afford it already. If we have to raise it, that means that less people are going to be able to afford it. We're going to cut costs by getting rid of the workers. And then once you get rid of the workers, because they automated everything, guess what? There's no more work left in a decade for nobody. Your lawyer is going to be a computer, right? Y'all up here talking about chat BTYT, and you're talking about AI bots and all this stuff, right? That's going to be your lawyer. That's going to be your doctor. when I was showing you the stock markets, the companies already exist that's doing remote surgery, where the doctor is at home on PlayStation control. I mean, it's not a PlayStation controller; it's really like some different shit. But anyway, the point is they can conduct surgeries remotely via live feed connection and robotics and fucking, joystick apparatuses. Eventually, they can do that from a distance, or they can do that internally, where the robot and the doctor might be in the same room, but the doctor is over on the controls with the little camera and the screen. I mean, the camera's on the little shit and doing the surgery. He's on the screen doing the shit because it's big, and he can make my more precise movements robotically than with his hand. So they say. And then the extension of that is, hey, let the doctor stay home, and then he can do it remotely via 5G. And then eventually you substitute the whole doctor out, and the robot performs the surgery by itself. So your doctor is going to be automated. Why? Same principle as these auto worker strikes led to, with the same issue of y'all people that are worried about making a profit don't realize, like I said, that means everything got to be cheaper, which means you're going to have to cut costs to do it as a business, which means somebody somewhere is going to get screwed, because you know the formula. You only have what is it? Quality, cost, and speed, right? You can't have all three at the same time. You can only have two. So if it's going to be quality and fast, then it ain't going to be cheap. If it's going to be cheap and fast, then it ain't going to be quality. You get the idea. So what these strikes do is it perpetuates the problem without solving the issue. And then one day everybody's going to wake up. All this talk on the music and certain cultures about you a boss, ain't going to be no bosses. It's going to be all bots. You're going to be celebrating how you a bot. That's what you are now, really. And we, until we stand up and do something about it as we the people. AI is already here. Artificial intelligence has been instilled in humanity for decades. See, that's why you hear me refer to the United States as the giant insane asylum, because when you think about this stuff, it naturally don't make sense, yet you will keep agreeing to it. And then they curse and demonize people like you and me for having a difference of opinion. Right? All right. So the problem is, unless the strikers, all right, next time you see strikers, look at them like this. Unless they talking about what the whole United States need, fuck that shit. Unless they talking about what your neighborhood need too, fuck that shit. Because it's only gonna fuck your neighborhood up if they not. That's why the people that don't want me to talk to y'all don't want me to talk to y'all. You know what I'm saying? They'll give so-and-so an opportunity, like they'll help them make $500 million because they know they ain't gonna do shit with it. See? That's why we gotta pull together. We gotta pull together and get these billions. Okay? All right, so let's move on. So that's basically what the shit is. And no matter what strike or what the company, that's why it's always going to be temporary, because they ain't helping your pockets none, and that means that you can't afford. It's going to be harder for you. Not going to say you can't afford it. Don't I ain't speaking on no ill on nobody, but it's going to be, now you're being drug along in the process of everything becoming more expensive for you and more problematic for you as well. So if it ain't helping your community, then they're against you. You know what I'm saying? And just because they brainwash, they mind control, like the song, go check the song out, Mind Control, Pasha Paroh. At what point do you stop giving them passes for saying, not realizing that someone's controlling their thoughts for them indirectly? Like the fact that the whole currency is fake to begin with. I'm to the point now where I'm so tired of seeing posts and comments or whatever, and people just talking in general about how they going to get their bag of money. Ain't been no money in circulation since the 30s. Once we as a people realize that, then we can start talking about, wait a minute, if ain't no money, what the fuck we doing? Because that's the beginning of how they can say, hey, productivity's up, what? 64%, and your wages, your hourly pay only up 17% in the same period of time. That's how they can do that, because ain't no real money. So all they got to do is attack you emotionally, and then you start believing you making something. So then you make that, and they can come in tomorrow and tell you, well, that ain't even worth what it was yesterday. Now it's worth this. But you ain't make shit. You ain't make shit. And then that's what causes the divide in the community. So-and-so think they better than somebody because they got on the luxury brand that they gave 60 to 80% markup to have, right? While the quote-unquote supposed auto manufacturers in America only get 6% for things that are much more of a necessity. I don't remember hearing Louis Vuitton going on strike. I mean, maybe I missed it. I'm not saying they didn't. I don't remember Coach employees having a lockout. Maybe they did. I don't recall Balenciaga going through a situation like this. So one, for the people that work there to have to strike is saying fuck everybody, but for the people of the nation to not make sure that the auto workers don't have to strike is really the people saying fuck them, because then the cycle continues. The people are so worried about themselves and they can't see how it's all connected. So here's the thing: united we stand, divided we fall. And that's why they don't want you to hear this American conversation. They want you to keep focused on United States citizenship. All right. So I appreciate your time. Let's move on with the next part of the thing. What we gonna go into? What I'm gonna go into here? I'm gonna start preparing the scene here for you. So let's go to Al Jazeera, right? If I probably didn't say that right, but let's do this. Because remember, the quote is, you will own nothing and be happy. So you can see how eventually they're going to say, well, look, we can't afford to make cars for everyone. So we're going to make X amount of cars, and then y'all motherfuckers share them. And then everybody's going to be like, why we got to share? Because y'all couldn't get this shit right, and everything's fucked up now. So this is what we got to do. And then we're all going to wonder, how did we get here? Because they didn't listen to us when we was telling them. You know, your neighbor didn't listen to us when we was having this conversation. They was telling you kick rocks. Right? Because they either part of the program, they either part of the oppression, or they just have mind control. So now we got to figure out, if we can't influence them in the same fashion as the psychops has, then you might be in a position where the only way to eliminate the problem is to eliminate the thoughts, is to eliminate the people that worship the thoughts. And now you're going to get into how we're going to carry this over into Gaza. Here we go. So let's look at this here real quick. U.S. is everywhere with their little military bases doing their little fucking shit, right? They tell you it's for something good. All right. And then I want to go here with it. That was just a brief little map. We ain't gonna spend a lot of time on that. But what I want to go to next is this right here. All right. Let me get that on the screen for you. Okay. So Israel, Hamas, war maps, live tracker, blah, 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 right? I'm not going to go through all of this. I just want to go through a couple of this little stuff here. So Israel has pounded the Gaza Strip for a fourth day, whatever this was. This was 5 hours ago, so apparently it's day 4. But here's what I want you to get, right? Fourth day in a row, and announced a total blockade, right? Key word here. We're going to build upon this, right? Because yes, this is absolutely connected to the auto workers situation. Remember what we just talked about. The auto workers feel like they're not making enough. The auto workers going to say fuck the people. They don't know they're saying fuck the people. They're going to say we want more. The corporation is going to raise the price of the cars and then tell them the people can't afford the cars. So then now they need to get rid of some of the auto workers because that's where so much their budget is going, which means that then the auto workers have to do more work to make more productivity. They're going to get less, more productivity is going to go up, and the people still aren't going to be able to afford the cars. All right, so let's get to this now. Total blockade of the already besieged Gaza Strip, including a ban on food, water, right? After Hamas carried out the biggest, because what this is being sold, if you don't know, which we're gonna cover next, if you don't know what this is or how this got here, it really sounds like Israel's being picked on, right? This is happening to Israel, and the whole world has to come to respond, and oh my god, right? First of all, if you don't know the history of Israel, go research that. All right, I'm pretty sure I covered it on, I forget the title of the video, but we covered it where we show what Palestine used to be and how they put Israel in place and systematically took the land, which kind of sounds like, excuse me, what was done in America, in the Americas, not exactly the same way. The irony of the people who think that they're Indians winding up on a reservation so that they could get the land grab from them, and now they're in this little space, and the U.S. is seen as being, this big while they get this much. All right, and we've covered the conversation of who the real Americans were and how this was already a civilization with cities, just like you kind of see today in another conversation. So don't be confused on that. I'm just using it for comparison. So let's get back to this. All right, so they're moving troops, right? They're giving statistics like it's the Super Bowl. They're really selling this story, right? So Gaza, is up, West Bank is down, fourth quarter this, Israel, time on the clock remains, right? That's what it looks like. Okay, so here's what I want to get to. 16 years of Israel blockade. 16 years. So Gaza has a population of 2.3 million people living in one of the most densely populated areas in the world. Located between Israel and Egypt and the Mediterranean coast. So that means Israel and Egypt and all the people around them are all involved, basically directly or negligently. Okay. So since 2007, Israel has maintained strict control over Gaza's airspace and territorial waters and restricted the movement of goods and people in and out of Gaza. Okay. So you control the movement of the people, and you have them sieged like they taught you in the old Roman warfare, where they would siege the cities, right? So if they're starving and you control the food, water, materials, everything, and if they can come and go, what's left for them, right? The reason they don't want to tell you this like that is because you might start to feel like this is what's happening in your backyard over a long period of time. And the reason they don't want you to start thinking that for entertainment purposes only is because Hamas started shooting missiles. I mean, they've been going at this for a while, but I'm just saying, you might get the idea that you need to throw some missiles somewhere. Now, I'm not saying that's what you need to do, because this is America, right? But here we go. 2.3 million people. And of course, this doesn't really tell you how big it is or how small it is in comparison. But basically, this is 25 miles by 6 miles here, it shows per the map. So I'm from the vicinity of Charlotte, right? What they would call Charlotte per non-domestic, because I'm American. When you go and look at the metro areas and stuff, and you look up a city to do anything with, like a study on a city, they normally give you a 25-mile radius. So when you see your city and they say, 25 miles, and they tell you your population of your city is 140,000 and it's 25 miles wide, imagine what your city would look like. And that's a circle. They give you a 25 mile wide circle. Now imagine 2.3 million people. I mean, if you can even imagine what 2.3 million people is, stuck into 25 miles, but by only 6 miles. And then someone's controlling your water, your electric. All right. Now, how did they get that way? Because you got to look at the fact of how are they going to get us to saying we accept America. See, this is big. Like, you might, unfortunately, you could see this being said to some parts of the world. I don't care if you think you're a United States citizen or that you're an American. Unless you are living under a rock, fuck that part. You when they tell you for real, like when you really hear this shit, if someone came to you tomorrow and said, look, man, whatever you think you own, you don't own it. And you don't already know it, because technically you don't own it as it is. But that, that's what they've been calling us crazy for. You registered your automobile. Oh, you got a mortgage. It's a death threat. The bank, you technically don't own it as it is, right? But when you think about things like your blender in your kitchen, you know what I mean? Your lawnmower, you kind of feel like you own certain things, right? But it'll be to the point where when it's time for you to cut your grass, you're going to have to schedule lawnmower delivery service or pay for the service to come cut your grass, because you will own nothing and be happy. And then when you get done with it, you have to schedule the pickup, and then they come pick it up so the next person can use the same lawnmower. That's the point they want to take it to. Why? Because the fiat currency keep failing, which makes the business model fail, which makes the workers want more, which makes the businesses want less workers, and the people still can't afford the product. And the people ain't done nothing about it yet. See, for better or for worse, Hamas and them guys are strip motherfuckers. They say, you know what? You've done too much. All right, let's take a look at this, because I want you to get the gist of what's really the history here, and then we'll move on. Give me 1 second to pull this up for you. All right. So let's jump on a lot of people's favorite site here, Wikipedia, because I just want to give you the imagery here, because the same way they're demonizing Gaza is the same reason why the auto union workers and the post office people have to go on strike here. It just looks different and played out different. until it doesn't and plays out the same, or something changes, or you own nothing and be happy for entertainment purposes. So the Gaza Strip, Arabic, or simply Gaza, is a Palestine exclave on the eastern coast of the Mediterranean, right? The smaller of the two Palestinian territories. It borders Egypt, like I said, on the southwest, and Israel on the east along the north, blah, 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 blah. Together, the Gaza Strip and the West Bank make up the state of Palestine, which has been under Israel military occupation since 1967. Okay? So if you go do a quick Google search on your own, either right now or after this, you'll see that Palestine used to be the majority of what's now Israel, right? Or at least what they call Israel. Okay. So the territories of Gaza and West Bank are separated from each other by Israeli territory. Both are under the jurisdiction of Palestinian Authority, but the Strip is governed by Hamas, and they a militant fundamentalist Islamic organization, right? They gotta, make it seem so evil, which came to power. And I'm not, again, this is not me defending whatever's happening there or anything like that. I don't know what I don't know, but what I do know is they talk about when they used to call it sovereign citizens or Americans or anybody that doesn't go along with the flow the same way to a degree, right? So you gotta be careful with the word spin, okay? But here we go. So, which came to power in the last held elections, 2006. Since then, Gaza has been under full Israeli-led land, sea, and air blockade. This prevents people and goods from freely entering or leaving the territory, leading to the territory ought to be being called an open air prison. Now, many of y'all here at YNS7 have heard the exact same thing about the United States being an open air prison. In the perfected model. All right. So think about that. So the Strip is 41 kilometers or 25 miles long. Give you some distance here. But here's what I want to go. All right. So Gaza is considered a top level political unit, ranks as the third most densely populated in the world. So the majority of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip are descendants of refugees who fled or were expelled from the area that became Israel after the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. Okay? So they were all over this place, and they were allowed to be in these small area that just got smaller and smaller, okay? So Gaza it gives you their annual growth rate, 2.91%. Now, it's often referred to as overcrowded. Gaza suffers from shortages of water, electricity, and medicines. Here's the irony. The United Nations, as well as at least 19 human rights organizations, have urged Israel to lift its siege on Gaza. While a report from the UNCTAD prepared for the UN General Assembly and released on November 25th, 2020, said that Gaza's economy was on the verge of collapse and that it was essential to lift the blockade. So how can you in one breath say the United Nations wants Israel to lift the siege on Gaza, but then as soon as Gaza fights back, the United Nations supports Israel in further destroying Gaza? Kind of sounds like what's happening in the United States on a different level, or in America, depending on what side you're on. Now here's how I got here. Now look, and this is why I'm saying this, because here's how this came about. Because it said earlier, for those that don't know, or whatever, that there's two parts now of Palestine, but this is what's going on in Gaza, but not the West Bank. Why is that? So when Hamas won the majority in 2006 Palestine legislative election, the opposing political party, Fatah, refused to join the proposed coalition until a short-lived unity government agreement was brokered by Saudi Arabia. When this collapsed under pressure from Israel and the United States, the Palestinian Authority instituted a government without Hamas, right, in the West Bank, meaning that the area up here, right, or up here basically, if you can see that that's the West Bank, and then Gaza's down here, the little strip. So the West Bank was like, hey, we're gonna fall in line. We're gonna do what they tell us to do. Kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it? When they told you to put the mask on and you said no, and then your neighbor called the cops on you for cutting the grass and you're across the street 600 feet away from them because you didn't have no mask on your own property because the neighbor was the West Bank and they said we're gonna go along with what they told us to do, and then you became the Gaza Strip, right? All right, so where we're at. All right, so further economic sanctions were imposed by Israel and the European Quartet against Hamas, right? A brief civil war between the two Palestinian groups broke out in Gaza, or when Fatah, if I'm pronouncing that right, contested Hamas's administration. Hamas emerged the victor and expelled Fatah allied officials and members of the PA securities apparatus from the Strip and has remained the sole governing power in Gaza since then. In 2007, more than 100,000 Gazans worked in Israel, but Israel stopped issuing permits to Gazans after Hamas took control. So you mean that kind of like how they could do that to Americans in the United States, right? I know you're saying that discreetly, that's what's happening to you, some of you behind the scenes anyway, right? Oh, they give you the title of a felon, so you're not allowed to work here, you got to work over there type thing. They tell you a whole bunch of different ways, right? Oh, you don't have this piece of paper that says your degree, so you can't do this, even though you do it better than the people that had the degree. But they got the degree, they got the cosign from somebody, so they get to do it, right? All right. So in 2021, however, it began granting them again in a search for stability following the 11-day war with Hamas. So they had to go to war just so they could go to work. See, United States citizens kind of take that shit for granted. These motherfuckers had to go to war for 11 days so that they could go to work. So that they could cross a line in the soil, in the sand. So that they could have at least interrupted water supply. So that they could sometimes, hopefully more of the day than not, have electricity. So you heard me say, like, the United States ain't gonna understand what Americans is talking about until bombs start dropping here to disrupt everything. And it'll be too late then, because we could have done something about it before the union workers went on strike, but we were too busy being selfish. We were too busy worried about ourselves. And then the auto workers didn't have to go on strike, but they were too busy being selfish. And now a Ford Mustang costs $300,000. So let's keep going. So where we at? They went to war for 11 days. In 2022, Israel defense minister decided to issue an additional 1,500 work permits for a total of 17,000 and aims to increase it to 20,000. So the Gaza Strip has 2.3 million people in there. And these motherfuckers went to war for 11 days, so 20,000 of 2.3 million could go to fucking work. You know, but you'll attack someone for the littlest shit here in the United States. You fight each other for the littlest things. Meanwhile, the one that's put you all in that position, you do nothing. You do nothing to. I've lost, you know, in my life, I've lost what people would say jobs as for standing up for humanity, because that's what I do all the time. You know what I mean? The first job I got terminated from in my 20s was me telling the supervisor that we're all concerned about a life here if they're not. That was my introduction to corporate America. Like, hey, you know, come in, great. Oh, you're 1,069% goal every month. Oh, wow. You know, you're doing. Oh man, you're the best one that ever did it. Nobody's done it since you've been here. Wow. Okay. Your friend falls down, has a seizure. Ain't never had a seizure before in their life. No medical history of any problems like that. And then, you know, when you tell them you're worried about the life of a human being, that's a problem. See, that was my introduction to corporate America. Fuck the being 20 years old making $50,000 a year in 2000 when 50,000 was something, even though it was fake fiat currency then too, right? All right. So these motherfuckers went to war for 11 days so that 20,000 people could go to work, of 2.3 million people. We over here spending, I'm saying we collectively, because what the United States citizen do affects what the Americans are perceived to be doing. See, the rest of the world don't know. Much of the rest of the world don't separate United States citizen thinking, mentality, doing, and American. When you hear them talk about what's going on, they say the Americans. So we got repercussions from the ignorance of the brainwashed. And again, how long do you keep dealing with that shit before you got to get rid of the people who like the thought of? Because when you look at life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, I mean, you're allowed to do what you want until it affects someone else, right? So if the United States actions, including their citizens, are now injuring the American people, we the people, by putting us in a position where it takes $100 to buy what $2 bought you less than 100 years ago, which means you got to work 3 times as much so that productivity matches your rate of pay, which means actually productivity will never match your rate of pay. But you get what I'm saying? You're making 1/3 of what you should based on productivity, which then means that your health is affected by it, right? Because you're in toxic workplaces and you absorb that energy and come home and transfer the negativity and energy into your family's household. So when you see me post something like the United States has destroyed more people than, where is it at? Than, prostitution, murder, drugs, all that shit. I mean, you really gotta look at the truth, the infinity of the shit here. Like I don't make these statements lightheartedly. Here it is here. The United States has ruined more lives than prostitution, drugs, and murder in America combined. Yet there is no rehab program available because there's no government funding for a program and no tax incentive for America to become American. All right, so let's look at this real quick. So here's a little animation to show what was going on with the land grab, so to speak. I'll show you this one time real quick. Excuse me. So obviously the lighter color area is what they're labeling as the Arabs or Arabs, and the darker color area is the Jews, which we know the story about that situation. So this whole area here is down what they gave Israel. Here's the West Bank. Here's Gaza. The West Bank said, hey, we're going to go with you. We're going to play you guys' rules. And then they went against their own people for the sake of fitting into a system that's designed to exploit and destroy them. And then Gaza became isolated by itself. It was already isolated because obviously there's a gap here. All right. So now I'm gonna take a little bit of a detour and go here, because something that's interesting to consider as the United States deploys their resources and assets to the Mediterranean Sea to help Israel with an aircraft carrier of destruction in jets, bombers, and whatever else missiles and bombardments they're gonna put on 25 miles by 6 miles of 2.3 million people who were fighting back from being starved, cut off from the rest of the world, without electricity. I mean, it kind of sounds like this is practice so that when they do it to the American people in America, United States people won't be seen as evil, brainwashed, zombie apocalypse attacks people. You know what I mean? Like, because they've had this whole global exposure on doing it with the Palestinians and Israel. Okay? Because to think about this here, to say you will own nothing and be happy, guess what else you're not considering? Because the first thing I know many people is thinking about is tangible things, your car, your home, shit like that, right? Like we said, your toaster, your lawnmower. You're missing the fact that you won't even be able to own your own thoughts. Your thoughts aren't going to be yours anymore, which is why they're going to have the social credit score to make everybody fall in line or face prosecution. Your own thoughts aren't going to be yours. You see where this is going? All right. So here's the thing. In that area, you have to look up, we covered this before on the channel, you have to look up the new U.S. Embassy in Lebanon. Now, for those that travel around the world, especially in today, maybe you've seen some embassies. Okay? I did a extensive review of this. Forget the title. Go look at the channel. It's on there somewhere. This is the new embassy that they're building right now. If it's not finished, or I think it's still under construction, pretty, in Lebanon. All right. You can come here to this site, their own U.S. Embassy in Lebanon site, and look it up. But let's go to the map real quick. And I'll show you this real quick because I want you to see why this region has some additional value off radar. Okay. So here, and we're almost done. We'll wrap it up shortly here. So here is the map. Okay, right here is the original U.S. Embassy in Beirut. All right. You see the buildings in the area, which is kind of like what I spent a little bit of time pointing out on in the last video. You see the buildings. You use Google Maps before. You know what these little boxes are here. They're buildings. Okay. So here's the buildings. You see the average size building, and then you see the U.S. Embassy. All right. And then here's where they're saying they're building the new embassy. Now look at the size of this building. Right? You see the box that's there compared to the other buildings. Right? And then let me switch over to satellite because they don't show you here what this really looks like. So here's the building that the old embassy was. You saw how big it was. And then here, all this here is the new U.S. Embassy. Here's the other building that was the U.S. Embassy in Beirut. Now all of a sudden, they need all of this to do the same thing in the same area. Why? Well, when you zoom out, you see here's Lebanon, just north of Israel. Right? And with the shift, supposedly, of the power structure, the economy, everybody's thinking China's going to be the next, U.S. industrial type thing. You got India coming, a big thing. The new resource strip search is going on in Africa. And of course, you got England, the time zone controllers, so that they can talk to, no matter what day it is, they can talk to China all the way to the United States, all in the same work day for them. They're like one of the only places that can do that. So this here now becomes the center, because why was Jerusalem so important before? Or, aside from the religious part of it, okay? It was also highly sought after crossroads, because if you look at it, going by what, the quote unquote known world at some point in time, it was the center of the known world in trade routes. So whoever controlled Jerusalem also controlled the trade routes, basically from Africa to China to Russia and the UK, or, Europe, which then you could go through Europe and sail a little bit of water and go, versus sailing all the way around, whatever. All right. So why would they be so worried about Israel long term? Why is there a huge fucking complex being built in Beirut? You got to ask yourself about the direction of the world economy, what that means for the United States, which we talked about in that other video. So now I want to get to tie this all together with the you will own nothing. Okay. And then we'll wrap this up. So how can they do this? Because they're gonna say, the American people, which you gotta remember, there's a difference between the American mentality and the United States citizen mentality. But you're gonna, for the most part, think that the people here probably wouldn't go along with that. But then you gotta remember what they just did for the last 3-4 years too. If that ain't prove something to you, then nothing else will, right? But look, they've had good practice with it in Germany, right? And I'm a fan of saying, in order to know American history, you got to know world history. So, in order to know what's happening in America today, or the future, what America is trending to or being guided to by the United States, you just got to look around the world at what the practice is. Okay, because they're not going to just come in and set up beta tests in your backyard. Like, you're not going to see it being done and be like, hey, wait a minute. No, this is why stuff happens over here. This is why China's doing this, but it's ran by, like, the whole surveillance system was built by American companies, right? But then you're looking at China like, oh, they got surveilling their people and they do it. No, American, or let me say United States corporations built that in China. What were they practicing for? For entertainment purposes. All right. So let's take a look at this. Buying a house in Germany, right? Depending on where you live in Germany, you'll find it different. People mostly prefer living in apartments in the big cities in Germany, whereas people in suburban areas tend to live in houses. Also, big houses are present in big cities, but they are pretty expensive. Okay? So people in Germany buy properties for a lifetime. So how Americans buy stuff and then move and go get this and go, because it's really, when you look into it, it's really difficult for people to buy a home in Germany, for example. All right. And here is some home data statistics, right? So United States, right? Home ownership is about 65%, to put it in perspective for you. So they say. And what I mean by home ownership is basically properties in the United States owned by people. Okay? It's 65%. And they use the word own even though they don't may or may not know that they don't own it. All right. Now, when you look at the numbers for Germany, it is less than 50%. Okay. So less than 50% of the properties in Germany are owned by people. Now, why are you bringing that up? Because what you saw happen, or at least be reported on happening in the United States during the collapse of housing infrastructure or housing industry, was the grand scheme. What's going on basically is that corporations are now buying housing, whole developments, just housing in general, not for resale anymore, but to make it a renting situation. So the goal is to make all of the United States, or as much as possible, a renter's nation, so that, again, the corporations, the hedge funds will have all of the funding. They'll go in and buy all of the properties up. We, the people, will be forced, for the most part, to rent because it'll be too expensive, right? To buy or even to sell, which you saw in California. Okay. So let's get back to this. Here's what I wanted to show you. So, all right, let me just go through this for you real quick. So so transportation, schooling, grocery stores, and job opportunities also matter when looking for a property. There's always an option for foreigners if they want to rent a property or instead look to buy one. Buying a house in Germany is a better option than renting a house. Keeping yourself familiar with the processes and information regarding buying a house in Germany is essential if you have plans. So when you look at people that are living over in Germany and you go and research their posts and what they're sharing and their live videos and their real estate people that's talk, doing the same thing our real estate people do, they're telling you that it is becoming more and more since the whatever you want to call it, spread those 2 years, and they were able to manipulate pricing. People can't buy houses. Like you can't afford it. Period. The banks aren't giving the loans. They want too many considerations to be met, and if the one person in the household had a baby and didn't go to job, whatever, not working for a period of time, quarantine, people lost their jobs. So now everything is to a point where it's much more challenging to get approved for a home loan unless you have some sort of wealth in the family type situation. Like they're not giving out loans like they used to. They're not doing that in Germany. So it's really difficult right now for them to buy. All right. So let's look at this, because I want to get to this highlighted part here, and then we can move on and we'll wrap this up. So it says it's a dream for of different nationalities to own a property and consider a significant feat in life. Also, people consider it is wise decision to invest in properties. Yeah, because they were same thing that you saw over here is happening over there. Like the one family I was looking at, for example, he said they went to purchase a house, and they were told they needed like $50,000 more of a down payment than what they had at the time. Like they might have had like, I want to say like 100,000 saved up, and then they were told they needed like another 50,000 at that time. And then stuff happened, and wife had a baby, stopped working. The husband, on paper makes enough to do it, but because the wife's not working, they don't get qualified for the loan. Like any excuse is good enough, right, to say no. So then in the same period of time, the house done went up like $80,000. Now they need more. You know what I mean? That whole domino effect. So anyway, buying a house in Germany by taking a huge loan is considered risky to many people. So they kind of hid that in here, and this is why the banks aren't giving it out. So you need like that 20, what we want, 20% over here down, 5% with certain criterias, maybe nothing if you qualify for a certain thing. That doesn't fly over there. They don't have that opportunity, so to speak. So I mean, the same way we do over here, or people think we do over here. But here it is, less than 50% of the properties are owned by the people in Germany, which is also very low considering European countries other than Germany. So, but the low interest rates are the reason the trend is now changing, right? Which I don't know when this was written in October, but the guy, you know how that go. Low interest rates is for those who they say qualify. So these guys and these people that I'm watching, they not getting qualified. They you know what I mean? They not getting the approval notice. So just like everything else, okay? And you saw this happen in California with the mansion tax. Everybody wanted to sell their property. So we are that close to a bunch of different reasons for them to now make it difficult for people even more difficult for people in what you think is the United States to buy and think they own property. And if you look at what they're doing, they call it a mansion tax, and the person that's living in the $400,000 or $200,000 or $100,000 home is like, that's what they get. They make it all that money. Yeah, but once you start supporting it happening to them, just like the union workers on strike, you don't realize you're opening yourself up for and basically saying you would appreciate it happening to you on your level too. So then the people that are buying $100,000 homes, they can't sell them to another person without the tax being too crazy. People in that position that would have been able to buy them can't buy them anymore. Then these hedge funds, these corporations come in, buy up your whole neighborhood, and then they make the whole neighborhood renting. Nobody owns nothing, and you'll be happy getting your lawnmower delivered by a service like Domino's so that you can use it and then send it back. Why? All because we want to go on strike for our own selfish reasons and not consider your neighbor is your customer or your supplier. And how does that affect them, which affects you? I'm Pasha Paroh. I think we should do something before you realize America is the Gaza Strip in the United States.